Do you want to create professional lighting and power plans faster than ever, without the headache of complicated CAD software? In this video, I'll be showing you how to design clear, build-ready electrical drawings, step by step. So let's dive in. Hi, I'm Chris, an architect based in the UK, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create lighting and power plans faster and more efficiently than with traditional tools like AutoCAD. We'll cover everything from the basics, like understanding lighting types, to placing lighting symbols on your drawings, indicating switch circuits, and even creating an outline spec sheet. I'll be using Rayon Design, a free browser-based 2D architectural drawing tool with features like the powerful wall tool, style presets, and the vast block library, including side views. Rayon helps me work twice as fast. To follow along, just create a free account and open the template linked below. Let's get started. Okay, so what is an architectural lighting and electrical plan? It's a detailed drawing that shows you the placement of lighting fixtures, power outlets, switches, and wiring paths within a space. And the purpose is really to guide an installation team, so whether it's electricians or contractors, to implement your design intent accurately. Depending on your project's scope or complexity, the lighting and electrical plans may be combined into a single drawing or separated. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to create a comprehensive plan covering both aspects. Right, starting at the beginning, this is the apartment that we're going to be looking at. So it's a pretty standard apartment, a living dining space, 2 bathrooms, an entryway with some storage, a master bedroom with an outside terrace space, and then a second bedroom and some store space as well. And we'll get started by making sure we've got all our layers set up correctly. So if you look on the left-hand side here, we have our series of layers, our furniture layer, our wall layers, everything nice, neat and tidy, and we'll get started by introducing a lighting and electrical layer. Okay, so we'll start by creating our dedicated layer for lighting and power. So we'll go into layer, we'll create a new layer called lighting and power, and then I will create an additional layer, and you'll see why in a second, and we'll call that one background. So one thing to really note is that we want to keep all the furniture on when we're designing lighting layouts, because the really key thing is to understand where people are going to be dwelling, where they're going to be sitting, what different tasks they're going to be doing. So the furniture is really, really key to that. I want to be able to host my background layer within my lighting layer. So I'm just going to drag that down, and it will be nested within that layer family. And on my background layer, I want to create a zone. So with the zone tool down here, I'm just going to create a rectangle that sits over our plan. And what I want to do is make that white, make it say 50% transparent. I can get rid of the stroke. And that basically means that with that layer on, just hide an inch for you, so you can see that it knocks the transparency of the drawing back, and that means when I start drawing my lighting symbols, they will be very clear on the page, and the actual background layer will be slightly ghosted. It will really help the drawing read a lot better. We'll put that on, we'll lock it, so that means that I don't touch that layer, but I can still click through it if I want to. I could lock those other layers as well if I wanted to as well. And with that set up, we can now go in and start thinking about our lighting layout. So we can go into blocks and into libraries. And Rayon has an incredible array of blocks, all the different furniture, all the different types of things that I would want for my drawings. And obviously it has a lot of lighting symbols as well, and electrical symbols. So we can go down to the lighting symbols. It does have a lot of lighting fixtures as well, which I'll just show you. So these are obviously visual things that can appear in your drawings as visual elements. So say you were doing a elevation, for example. But for this drawing, I want to be looking at the symbols. So I'll find lighting symbols. And here are the array of different symbols. The other thing it does is have a lighting legend. So different countries will have different types of symbols that they use as standard. So within Europe, within the UK, within America, they may have nuanced different symbols. So I can find the UK symbol, which is down here, and I can drag and drop that into my drawing. I can scale that up. And obviously, when I'm thinking about this, I want the symbols to be legible on the drawing. It's not about having the lighting the exact size it's going to be. This is a key drawing, and is showing symbols to be emblematic of the actual lighting. So we want these to be visible on the page. So we'll make that quite large so we can reference it. And then when you start thinking about your lighting, there are obviously lots of different types of lights. So we've got things like ceiling mounted lights, wall lights, different types of switches, pull cord switches, emergency lighting if we need it, chandeliers, spotlights, LED strip lights, all the different array of different lights that we're going to be thinking about as we go. One thing I do want to do is make this layer colored. So I would normally use a different color to make it stand out again. So I'm going to set all these to red. So I can come into that block and I can go down to the style and I can edit the style to be red. Okay, so you can see that all the elements are now set to red. And then when I start populating the drawings, that will have some level of consistency. Okay, so we can now start thinking about actually lighting our plan. So we'll start with ambient lighting, so the sort of background lighting to the spaces. I'll go with a sort of standard downlighter symbol, paste that into the drawing. We want to make sure that that's the correct layer for us, so it appears above the rest of the drawing, for example. And in the kitchen space, we'll say we'd want a light over the sink. Having it in front of you rather than shining on the back of your head is really important. So shining the space that you're actually working on. And maybe there are 4 of those that light that general space of the kitchen. Now, when I'm starting to think about it, it's all quite intuitive and it's all kind of thinking about how I would be using the space, and that's why the furniture is really important. And there's a kind of an idea of general alignment, and then we'll come on to sort of refine that alignment as we go. So we've got our sort of 4 spotlights in the kitchen space. And actually, a really good thing is to have a pendant light within the sort of main living space, so that the pendant light isn't on the UK lighting symbols. So I can go to blocks, I can go to my library, and the search feature is another really good thing that I use all the time with Rayon with the library. So I'm going to just search for pendant, and we'll go with this one. So we can drag that in. And then with this, I can think of kind of 2 plausible options for the pendant. So one would be in the very center of the space, and one could be over the dining table. Personally, I like to center it to the window. So if I think about, it being aligned with the center of that window and then being aligned with the living space, it's a nice feature. It sits comfortably and provides a nice balance amount of light. And then I can see, as I start placing things, actually these 3 lights could align, and that will be, helpful and, visually appealing. So we then have our lighting for the kind of living area. We have lighting for this area of the kitchen. But this bottom end of the kitchen's not very well lit, and this is another counter space. So maybe here we want a sort of an LED strip type light that will provide a nice linear lighting to that space, and that can sit just over here. So I'm lighting the space that's not going to be blocked by my head using the space. And then finally, something, you then start to think about sort of accent lighting and more sort of mood lighting that you can introduce. So wall lights, for example, could be good in this space as well. So we'll take that out of there, and actually having 2 wall lights here creates a nice sort of comfortable space for that sofa, and will add a little element of sort of warmth and variety, because you don't always have to have all the lights on at the same time. You can have a sort of different scene to be set at different times of the year, at different times of the day. So that feels like a nice sort of balance for that space as an example. Okay, so as another example, we could look at the entry space and maybe one of the bathrooms. So within the entry, we want a nice sort of balanced light. So I think it's another sort of ceiling mounted light fitting that's probably central within this space, but maybe it's a different type of light. So it's not, it's not a sort of recessed spotlight. It's actually a surface mounted light. So we could then start to code our different lights by numbers or by letters. So we could say these are type 1 lights and these are type 2 lights. So I can add a text tag onto that and say number 2, for example. And then if that's number 2, then I can say these are actually number 1. So then I know that, my standard recessed spotlights are number 1. This is number 2. So that's sitting comfortably, giving a nice balanced light in that space. Again, I think a wall light would be nice on one of these walls, and it gives you something to kind of draw to. So having a wall light off in the distance with a slightly different type of glow acts as a really nice sort of feature on that wall. And another thing that I always tend to do is incorporate PIR based lighting within wardrobes. So that means that when you open the wardrobe, it has an inbuilt, normally a linear light fitting in there that will provide, a nice even light into the cupboard for whatever you're looking at. So, and that's based off when you open the door, the light turns on. So having 2 of those in each of there is perfect. Further along the corridor, I like to think about, say, we want to hang some pictures or some artwork on the walls. So this is where directional lighting can be really helpful. So you can see the symbol just here. I can drag that directional symbol in. Again, scale it up. One here. Here. And then, maybe there's an opportunity for something on that wall. Maybe there's an opportunity for something on that wall. There's an opportunity for something on that wall. And again, I'd be centering those within the corridor and centering those within the door space. But again, that gives a nice idea. It gives variety. So, light bouncing off different walls. And obviously a well-lit piece of artwork is, really, really beneficial. In the bathroom space, we can just quickly look at an idea. So take this bathroom space, for example. I'm always thinking about alignment when I'm doing lighting plans. So for me, I'd be thinking about this sort of central corridor. It's quite a long bathroom, this one. So, I'd be setting up a axial relationship with the door. I'd probably have some simple spotlights, 1, 2, 3, for example. And, I'd normally sort of set these at least sort of 450, 500 mil off of a wall surface, and then equally space them. Similarly, within a shower space, for example, a really nice thing to do is have a recessed cove light. So where you have a linear LED fitting within a recess along the sort of long wall of a bath or shower. So we can do that here, for example. And that provides a really nice indirect type of light, very soft, and normally, shows off, if you had a sort of marble surround for that shower, that would be perfect. And similarly, a wall-mounted light fitting next to your sort of sink mirror vanity space provides a nice, sort of balance amount of light across your face when you're looking in the mirror, and can be an attractive, little feature within the bathroom space again. So that's how I would sort of plan out, that bathroom space. So I'll just carry on, setting the lighting up for the rest of the apartment, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've just spent a little bit more time adding the rest of the sort of basic lighting layout for the spaces, populating it as I see fit. So, bedroom spaces, slightly different to the secondary bedroom spaces. We've got an external terrace space with some floor-mounted lights and a wall-mounted light. The second bathroom, a small store space. And as I said, the next step would be sort of aligning them, setting them out, and dimensioning the drawings, for example. So I'll make sure that I'm again on the correct layer. I can start to think about my sort of setting outline. So a wide dash, so as I've drawn, is quite helpful for that. And I basically want to sort of pick up where there are alignments. And alignments are a sort of architect's best friend, and something that, sometimes I just sit in a space looking at what aligns on a ceiling. Say if I'm out at a restaurant, for example, I'll always be looking at alignment, because when it's done well, it looks natural, it looks right. And when it's not, it's really obvious. So again, just thinking about the alignment of these spaces, we said earlier that this is centered within that space. Obviously these lights that we're saying are directional, but we want those, centered within that corridor space. Similarly, the entrance light, for example, wants to be centered within that initial, lobby space. And again, the bathroom, as we discussed, wants to be located centrally within there. So I'm just starting to pick up those things. And I can even, add notes, for example. So here, I'd say at C-L for centerline window. Because the other thing you need to think about is the sequencing of when these things are going to be set out and what's going to be in the space for you to be aligning to. So, for example, I can say centerline to window because I know that window opening will be formed when they're going to be setting these lights out. It might not be the case that this kitchen is in when they're setting the lights out. So I would be better off measuring off a wall or a surface of a wall, or aligning to something that I know is going to be, in the scheme earlier than, some of the furniture, for example. I'll start to do, those alignment pieces, and then I can add dimensions, for example. So I can, like I said, I can either add a dimension here. So, just a number, and I can change the style. I can change the size of the text. I can change the line. I can save that as a style. So we'll call that lighting dims, for example. The wall lights, for example, when I was placing them on the drawing, I wasn't really, thinking of a dimension. But, for example, we could say those are around 450 mil off of that side. And again, 450 mil off of that side. And for me, using these annotation lines really helps sort of speed up the process of me setting things out. And then I can dimension off of the wall, same again there. And then I can just use the picker style little picker, and that will make sure that my dimension lines are nice and consistent. So similarly, I could use equal, and that's something I do very often with lighting layouts. So for example, because of site tolerance and things like that, this final dimension is drawn as 1241, but the reality is it's probably plus or minus a couple of mil either way. So to avoid doubt, I would be much better off putting a dimension one side, a dimension the other side, and I can just override the thing that's been read out and just put equal. Again, I can make sure it's set to be visually consistent. And that just means that whoever's doing it on site will make sure it's in the center of the space, and that's much easier to communicate. Okay, so I've just added a few more dimensions to the plan, and now I want to think about the switching. So the switching is, again, a really kind of intuitive thing. It's about thinking about when a person is walking through a space, where they need to be when they enter the space to switch a light on or off. Similarly, I like to think about if I'm going to bed, for example, where do I need a switch to make sure that I can turn the lights off, in an easy way, not have to be sort of annoyed or frustrated that the switching isn't in the sort of natural location. So think about it intuitively. So, let's start at the front door, for example. When you come in, you would want a switch, probably on this side. So we can go to our blocks, we can go to libraries, again, back down to our lighting symbol. I'll just quit. And we just drag in. It's a very simple symbol. And again, there are different standards for switches based on where you are. So that's where we want our switch naturally to sit. Similarly, on a lot of projects that I work on, you have, much sort of higher end control systems, so Lutron keypads and things like that, where you can set scenes, where you can, automatically set things on your iPad, for example. But just thinking about this in a sort of more traditional way, similarly, as I walk through this space, I think a switch here, I can rotate that, would be really helpful, as my sort of main point of access into the living dining space. But, take it, for example, if I'm sitting on the sofa and I want to change my lighting, so I want to turn the pendant light off because I want something a bit comfier, a bit cozier, I just want my wall lights on, having to walk all the way over there is a bit of a pain. So actually having a secondary switch, maybe on the return of this wall, nice and discreet, out of the way, I'm sitting on that sofa and I can just quickly switch the light, is really helpful. Again, think about it. The switches, you wouldn't have a switch unless it was like a pull cord or something in the bathroom. So they would be on the outside of the walls, outside of the space, for example. Or, over here, for example, if I'm on my way to bed and I want to turn these hallway lights off, I don't want to have to turn them off, over here and then walk through that space in darkness. Ideally, I would have a light, a switch over here. And earlier we said that this light is pointing at that wall for artwork. So actually I want that wall quite clear. So I'll put the switch on this wall. And you will sort of design and think about the process as you go. You'll discuss this with your clients, see what their feelings are. But again, it's very sort of intuitive. Similarly, when I enter the space, having a switch on this wall, it's kind of key. I don't want it hidden behind the door, for example. But similarly, actually having a switch next to my wall light when I'm laying in bed, again, might be really helpful. So incorporating something over there that maybe controls, allows me to set different levels of light, or, turn the pendant off and keep the wall light on, even that could control the outside spaces. Once I've started to think about the switching, I then start to have a bit of fun with these wiggly lines. And that's something that always kind of attracted me to lighting plans, is that they always have these sort of wiggly lines that I never really quite understood. The reality is with those lines, they're very easy to draw. So you just go to the shapes panel, you go to curve. They're just about showing the sort of sequence of the lights and which switch connects to which lights. And which are on separate circuits. So if a line is connecting a series of lights, they are on the same lighting circuit. So when I switch one, it switches all of those on. So for example, from this light, I could say actually all 4 of these kitchen lights are on one circuit. So for example, just in this space, I can have some different lighting circuits. So one could be, that's the kitchen lighting circuit. We could have the pendant on a different circuit. We'd want the wall lights on a different circuit. And again, you could have that separate light for those units on a separate circuit again. So, that would allow you that flexibility of control. And similarly in this bedroom, for example, so my switch is over here. So I've got one circuit for my pendant light. We've got like a nice task light above the desk here. We've got some lighting in the sort of wardrobe space. And then you've got this separate wall light here. Okay, so you can see that I've sort of finalized the idea of the lighting circuit and the connections. And we did say at the beginning that this is a combined lighting and electrical plan. So let's have a quick think about the electrical element. So again, I can go down to electrical symbols. And, similarly to the lighting, we've got a legend over here. So we can drag that in. Perfect. And now we want to start thinking about the electrical elements. So this is, plug sockets, things like that, data outlets. And I'll just show you a few examples. So, a twin switch socket outlet, for example, that's something quite standard. So again, we can just copy that out. And again, it's that sort of intuitive thing. So as you go, so, earlier we would have thought where the placement of the TV is. So obviously the TV requires some switch sockets, and we don't want to pepper the drawing with them, but people will thank you later on for having enough sockets, particularly around the TV area. Similarly, these are helpful, if you're on the sofa, maybe eventually you've got like a little coffee table here, and you want to charge your phone while you're sitting down, or maybe you've got a little lamp on your side table. Again, having sockets on your kitchen worktops is really key. You might have, things like toasters or kettles sitting on the worktop that you want to power. And again, even think about, stuff like hoovering, for example. So, having a socket at low level somewhere in the hallway is really beneficial for that. And, I like to think about them, placing them kind of conspicuously, amongst the space, not having too many, but, having enough that you've designed it in such a way. And again, with the sort of setting out, I'm either thinking about it in a sort of discrete way. So I'm placing it, in a corner, behind something, sensibly. I'd be centering these within these units, for example, or centering them within this space. But again, most of the time these are either at low level or just above sort of worktop level. If we're thinking about these spaces, in the bedrooms, for example, this could either be, somewhere to do some work, a little workstation, or it could be somewhere to do some makeup. So either way, having, power outlets is really helpful. And in some projects, you may have data outlets as well. So, actually wired in internet rather than Wi-Fi, or, things around data for the television, for example. So, we start to populate the drawing with those, again, referring back to our key. And, again, you have different types of standard symbols, even things like telephone, phone handsets or CCTV outlets. So eventually the drawing is doing a lot of work and really, communicating everything you need to know, but in a considered way. We're setting things out, we're aligning them. It's all very clear. And hopefully with that sort of knocked back plan, it's all, sitting visually well on the drawing as well. The final aspect just to consider are a series of notes. And these can be really helpful on a drawing, and they can kind of think about them like a set of rules. So if I'm talking to the electrician or whoever's going to be setting out the light fittings and the power sockets, for example, having a note section can be really helpful because it just kind of sets the guidelines. So setting either standard heights. So, the UK building regulations have requirements about certain heights of sockets off of floor locations or off of work surfaces, for example, or we can, set parameters for the fixing requirements, or, sort of making sure distances off of walls. So, for example, one sort of niggly element is sometimes having the architrave of a door, and you have a socket that's too close to the edge of that, or a switch that's too close to the edge of that. So, setting a sort of rule, a minimum of 150 mil, for example, set off of an architrave. And if that's not achievable, to, let the architect know, and then you can make a decision later down the line, sort of thing. So it's a really kind of helpful tool in your arsenal to make sure that your design intent is, met and kept to, and no one's sort of frustrated or disappointed. Okay, so with the plan drawn, to help clients visualize the products that we're going to be using, creating a mood board can be really, really helpful. And that can obviously relate with product images and dedicated information that relates to each tag of the lighting. So you remember that I was going through adding, key numbers, for example, to the lighting as I was going. I've started thinking about what those actual fittings are going to be like. So, earlier on, I knew that was going to be a directional light. So these number ones, and it allows me then to do a bit more research, find a suitable product, find something that meets my sort of aesthetic and budget aspirations. And it's really simple to add those images into Rayon. And for me, that's a really powerful thing, that I can do this in exactly the same software that I'm drawing in. Normally I'd have to be doing that in a separate piece of software. I'd have a different, either spreadsheet or, either an InDesign file, for example. And I can now just sort of copy and paste these from the manufacturer's website. So we've looked at directional spotlight, we've got a recess spotlight. What about a pendant light or a wall light? So I'm just going to quickly show you, I can go to a manufacturer, for example, and, I can do my research. So I can find pendants, for example, or maybe cluster pendants. And, I can find something that's maybe suitable. Here we go. Something that will sit nicely within the living space. That will do. So I can literally just copy that and paste. In it comes. And, similarly with the wall light, I can find a wall light and a wall light. Maybe something like that is quite nice in the bathroom. So again, I can copy, paste very simply. And the really helpful thing is that I can also edit the image. So I can go into edit, and Rayon's got these kind of incorporated AI tools as well, which are really helpful. So I could remove the background, for example, or if the image is coming in really low res, I can upscale it. So let's just show remove background, for example. So you can see there, that's removed the background. You can see there it's transparent. So, I could start layering these up and create a really sort of attractive mood board if I wanted to. So that can obviously sit as a page. We can add, more manufacturer's information, things that are helpful to the site team, for example, or codes, quantities. We can even set up a whole spreadsheet that details more information out about these light fittings. And obviously these two, elements sitting next to each other, the very factual setting out, electrical lighting plan and the visually appealing mood board are a perfect set of information for us. Okay, so finally we can prepare a drawing set for export, setting the scale, paper size in the page panel and organizing multiple layouts as needed. We can even export as PDF, PNG, DWG or DXF. So let's get started. Within the canvases, we've got our model space and we can create now a paper canvas. It will come up, if you haven't done that already, it will come up with create page, and we can set our page size and our scale. So I normally work on an A3, for example, so that's set there. The paper space will always be a 1:1, and you'll be looking at your view of your model space at a certain scale. We can now bring in a drawing sheet, so we can go to blocks, we can go down to title blocks, and again, search feature comes in handy. We can now put A3, find a title block. Yep, that one looks good. Align that with our page. Copy that over, and then we can close the blocks. We go back to layers, and now in the layer tab, I can go to new and I can go to view. So I can do that from the model space, and that is now taking a view of your model space, and that view will be at a certain scale. So you can see we can change the scale to 1:50, for example. So a larger scale drawing is actually really helpful when you're doing this type of thing. And if I double click on it, I can then, scroll about. If I start to zoom, that will obviously change the scale. So I can flip back to 1:50. If I come out, if I change the crop region that then hides the rest of the drawing. And then I can neatly fit it on my page. So we've got our keys on the left-hand side, we've got our notes, and then I can just copy that over here, and I can move over here. So I'm just scrolling in, make sure that fits on the page nicely, and I can set that centrally or however I feel. So really, really simple. And then I can just flick back to the model space if I wanted to make a change to the drawing. But in the paper canvas, I can turn things on and off. So because we've set up the layers correctly, I could decide to turn the furniture off or turn the walls off, or change the color, for example. So with those drawings set up, I can do a couple of different things now. So I can export it as a PDF, for example. So it's literally export PDF. I could export the pages separately, or I can export both pages as a document. I can change the file size. I can decide if it's a PDF, a PNG, and then just press export, and that'll come out as a PDF. Similarly, which is a element that I love about Rayon, is being able to share my projects and presentations. So I could share this as a link for collaborators. So I could get the rest of my team involved, having feedback and coordination across disciplines. So, I could even send it to a lighting designer for their impact and in their comments, for example. Similarly, which is an element that I love, is that I can publish as a presentation. And this completely avoids the need for exporting as a PDF, downloading, sending a link, waiting for client comments. I can just send it as a presentation, and it gives them one link and they can open it from there straight away, simple as. So I just go to presentation over here, click there, and there's my link. So I can open that, gives it a second to load the presentation. And there we go, there's our drawing. Wonderful. And I can obviously zoom in and zoom out as I see fit. Okay, so we've covered everything from setup and symbol placement to circuit logic, annotations, visual referencing, and exporting. So whether you're designing for a home, office, or retail space, these methods should hope to deliver you clear, functional, and buildable lighting and electrical plans. Thanks for watching this tutorial on creating lighting and power plans with Rayon. I hope you found it helpful and feel more confident tackling your own projects. If you're ready to get started, just click the link below to open the free template and begin designing your own lighting and electrical plans. No prior experience needed. If you have any questions or want to share your work, drop a comment or reach out anytime. Don't forget to subscribe for more architecture and design tutorials. Happy designing.